Welcome to Season 4 of UX Banter, your portal to insightful conversations with design illuminaries. We are back with even more engaging discussions with design leaders, delving into their experiences and inspirations. Get ready for fresh insights as you explore the latest trends and challenges in the industry. With me, your host, Dushyant Kanungo.
This podcast is presented by Galaxy UX Studio and powered by Galaxy Weblinks, an Inc. 5000 organization. Hello everyone, this is Dushyant Kanungo with yet another episode of the UX Banter podcast. Today we have a forward-thinking leader who believes design should enhance human experiences. Demonstrating his leadership style, he seamlessly combines visual design and human-centered principles to create efficient systems. What truly drives him is empowering others, and he is committed to nurturing his team's growth and celebrating their collaborative success. Please welcome today's guest, UX design lead at Michigan Software Labs. Welcome to the show, Grayson.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
There's always this case that whenever we meet certain people who are coming in from various different backgrounds and they lead or, come into the main journey has actually taken place and they've been to different places and they get to where they are from. So would you just guide us, telling us that what your creative background has been and what made you the design leader that you are?
Sure. So my background, I think the story starts with growing up with my parents. My father was a sculptor. My mother ran a community theater in our town where I grew up. I pretty much grew up in a theater. I was there every night doing my homework there, and dad was working in his studio at home. And of course, I rejected all that at first and went into sports and got heavily into cycling around 14, and I started racing. I was fairly good at it, good enough to spend the last 2 years of my amateur cycling career racing in Belgium and Holland, trying to become a professional. That didn't really work out for a variety of reasons, and I just ended up going back to school once I got back to America, and I started taking photographs and I started doing ceramics, and I was like, oh, this art thing, I think I actually want to do it after rejecting it for so many years, and ended up getting accepted to Savannah College Art and Design for photography, and then started looking at the bill for my student loans, and I was like, ooh, I'm going to have to pay for all this. And I transferred to the motion graphics department, and I think that's really where my user experience career or interest started. And then I ended up in Seattle, got a job at a company called the Omni Group, and a small independent Mac software developer. At the time, they were making Omni Outliner and OmniGraffle. As I got a job there as a graphic designer and slowly started making icons and pieces of UI and started contributing to user experience conversations. And in that time, user experience as a term wasn't really used. This was around 2005, 2004. Mm-hmm. But then this is sort of the really beginnings of the field in software. And then the iPhone got announced, and the Omni Group committed to having our applications there day one when the App Store opened. And we achieved that goal. And that was like one of the most exciting moments of my professional career, because we were designing for a brand new platform that had not existed. And it was just really creatively enriching and intriguing and fun. And then the iPad came out and we did the same thing. And so I think that's pretty much a summation of my career. And then I ended up in leadership at Omni, design manager, working with the CEO to determine the creative visual direction of our software. And then I just decided to I'd been there 16 years and decided to take a break for a year. And then I ended up here in Michigan at Michigan Software Labs as the design consultancy. And we're working with a variety of clients right now. So it's really exciting.
So your journey from Oregon to California, and in the middle, you have seen quite a bit of Europe and all the experiences with the creative field as a child that you must have had with sculptures and the stage even. And when you took up photography, I think the creative surroundings were always there. The sense of visual communication aesthetic actually builds up from all the experiences that you have. Even, I mean, if you're going cycling, you're looking at this beautiful nature all around you. And then I think it was a natural progression of getting a camera in your hand to make sure that all the photographs are taken right.
Yeah, I really like that description. It's funny you mentioned the cycling. I solve a lot of my UX thinking while riding my bike still. Like when I'm facing a problem I don't know how to solve, I'm like, oh, I better go for a bike ride. And I don't really think about it, but I am thinking about it in the background and end up coming up with some cool ideas and solutions. I also remember my father, because my father actually designed, he was the graphic designer for my mom's plays, and he would
Mhm.
design the posters. And I always remember looking over his shoulder, watching him draw. And I was always kind of fascinated, but I was such a horrible drawer at that time.
So you also mentioned that there was motion graphics somewhere in the play, and also when we are talking about the Omni Group, OmniGraffle was one of the tools that was at one point that everybody was talking about it, and it was supposed to come out as a mainstream UI design or visual design platform and tools. So do you think there was some extended pressure being a designer there where they wanted people to adopt that software, and you are a designer with the company? I mean, in the contemporary terms, saying that you are a designer at Figma. So
Yeah,
obviously
that's
that sort of pressure must be felt somewhere down the line.
a really great question. And I think we were caught, we were very surprised that suddenly people were using OmniGraffle as a tool to design websites.
Mhm.
And I think we were a bit slow to respond. I think one of the core principles of Ken Case, the CEO of the Omni Group, is he wants their software to be very capable. But I think we responded too late to this emerging market, and then Sketch came out. And to be really honest, they ate our lunch. They were like out of the box. They were so good at designing websites and software, and we tried in a lot of ways to respond to that. But because one of our core principles for the software was that we wanted to serve a whole swath of users, we just never really responded in time to this market that came out of, that emerged.
Yeah, I think it's about the same time when the sketch was, getting adopted. There was XD, they were sending it out as a free version. Then InVision Studio was there. And of course, Figma was getting its first legs at the same time. So market was very overtly crowded, I believe, when everything was just migrating from one platform to another. And everybody was like, in the middle, other than Photoshop, everybody wanted to use, say, Illustrator or Fireworks for getting things sorted. So I think it was up to the agencies or companies to decide that which platform to choose, which licenses to pay, because perpetual licensing was something that has already taken hold out of the industry.
Yeah, and I think that time period is really interesting in the software, because I think before, like I would say like 2000, before the iPhone really, software was designed in a lot of ways to be very capable for a lot of users. But as the iPhone came out, you saw this user experience focus on one or two things within a software experience to do it really, really well. And that's what Sketch did, and that's what Figma's done. And I think that's why you don't see people using OmniGraffle anymore, or Sketch anymore. I mean, people use them, but the majority of the industry now is using Figma, and it's an amazing tool, and I love it. So, yeah.
There we are. So how does, coming back to the backgrounds and the experiences that you have, how has your life experiences, all the travels, different domain of work, and the experience that you have gathered from the creative juices flowing around your childhood has impacted your user experience design?
I think it's created a lot of built-in empathy. Living in other cultures, like I also have lived in Mexico and living in different countries in Europe, going to Asia and learning about these different cultures, these different people, and how they getting a little bit of insight of how they look at using things. And I think that is just set a foundational sort of way of thinking about user experience problems, whereas it needs to be simple, it needs to be easy to use, and it needs to serve a wide variety of people.
I think one of the key terms that you mentioned, I think the last time I spoke, is about owning the craft while you are traveling and you are adding value to anything that you're producing. So can you explain a bit more about what does it mean by owning the craft?
I think something I learned from my father as a sculptor is, yes, he was an artist, but he was also a craftsperson. And to me, a craftsperson is working diligently day after day after day to get better at what they do. And I think that's what I mean by that is we need to just make little incremental steps forward in our craft, and whether that's in Figma or it's the way we think about design problem, it's a wide variety of things that we can every day push that forward and improve ourselves and own our craft.
That's a beautiful explanation of the fact. And now I'm going to mellow down the conversation with my rapid fire round with these questions. So I'm going to shuffle. So there is no order to the questions that I'm going to ask. So this is rapid fire. So are you ready?
Sure, let's go.
All right. Sunrise or sunsets?
Ooh. Sunrise.
Okay. If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
I'd love to fly.
All right. One day in your life that you would like to relive.
The first day I rode my bicycle.
Excellent. Books or movies?
Books.
Your favorite one?
Oh, probably For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway.
Oh, your favorite mobile phone app?
Oh boy, that is so hard. If I have to pick just one, this is gonna be funny since I come from the Omni Group. Things by Culture Code.
And why is that?
I think they have they have distilled the to-do user experience down to such a simplistic way of looking at it that I think is extremely usable and helps me be productive and remind me of things, and it just fits my brain. And I think it's really well visually designed.
All right. So you are a go out or a stay in person?
Oh, I like to go out a little, but I do like to stay in. It depends on the context. Like, am I going out with a bunch of friends? I think I want to go out and hang out with them, but sometimes I'd like to just stay home and watch Ted Lasso. I don't know.
All right. Window or aisle seat?
Aisle seat, because I don't want to disturb people if I need to use the restroom.
All right. And what about others disturbing you? Excuse me?
That's fine. I don't mind that at all.
If you won $10 million tomorrow, what is the first thing you will buy?
I am addicted to wind sports, so I would probably buy a kiteboard. I've been kiteboarding for 15 years. I'd probably buy new kites and a new board. Yeah, pretty simple.
Your favorite holiday destination?
Oh, my favorite. My wife and I love London, going to London and going there during Christmas time. It's really fun.
All right. And is there any industry that you always wanted to work for and never got a chance?
Gosh, I would love to work in like space or aerospace and work on user experiences there, or like Formula One, like working on their software that they're using in the pits. And I think that'd be really cool.
Absolutely. I think it's always cool to actually know that all the future visualization that they put on the screens whenever there is an aircraft launch, space shuttle especially, you watch that launch sequence and you say, somebody must have designed that. And
Yeah.
recently we saw those Elon Musk SpaceX new spaceships with very minimal number of knobs and keys. So I think that must have been exhilarating for somebody who was a designer there.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. It'd be really fun to do.
So with that, I'm going to put these cards aside and get back to something in depth. I mean, there were fine arts to UX methodology. There is always going to be a creative or a science based discussion that we always have in UX, because UX mainly stays on the principles that they are taught in school, they are taught in all the institutes and courses that you do. And there is always this saying goes that as a UX person, you are not supposed to make decisions, but just look at the data and just translate it, because you are doing the user advocacy. And that's a very dry field. If you think about it, there is nothing creative about it. But at the same time, somebody like you who is coming from the creative learnings and on an artistic background. Now, what sort of challenges that you think that are there that actually cause some level of frustration? Because anybody who has become a designer, they never wanted to go with those dry numbers. They always want to make sure that there is something specifically creatively satisfying which comes out of the output which they are producing.
It's funny, I was talking to one of the people on my team around this subject this week. I think what is hardest for me historically is designing something, handing it off to a developer, and they are saying, I can't do this. And I realize why I struggle with this historically, and the younger people on my team don't so much recently, is that I came from a print design background. So what I handed off to the printer got
They're
printed.
printed, yes.
I have historically, like in the early days of the web, when it was fairly limited, a lot of my designs were not, they couldn't get implemented.
Mm.
And it was a constant discussion and collaboration between the devs. And so I think even the young people on my team struggle a little bit with this when I mentor and coach and empower them to go get really creative with a solution, and maybe they go a little too far past what is possible in a development sense. There's that frustration of like, well, you're eating away at my creativity. And so what I try to work with them on is like finding those little pockets, work with the developer and say, well, what pockets of this solution can I keep and still exercise those creative juices. So I think that's kind of how I think about it, and it's kind of what I've always struggled with. But I think as I've gotten older, it's a lot easier to deal with.
Well, there are two things to it. I mean, every person who has ever been a designer and had to talk to a developer, they're always going to have the discussion that what the hell have you designed? And you actually got a client's approval on this. How the hell are we going to or supposed to build it? Because there are two problems actually. One is about the budget and the time constraint that they have. It's less about the technical competency, but more about that the time frame that we have been given to produce this. It will take more time, and that actually affects the entire estimation that we have given out. And that's when you have to be really creative about that, how it can go. So you have to tone it down a bit and then go back to the approval process and everything that happens. But on the flip side of it, I think one of my colleague, he actually wrote a blog post about it. So the thing here is that if you are aware about those JavaScript frameworks to be used, say a data visualization library, and go and see that what sort of customizations are on offer. So once you know it is possible technically, then you are going to design it. And anytime a developer says no, so you can just show them the library. Say, here it is, bro. This is for your reference. Now don't come back to me because I've seen it already developed. The code is pre-written. I'm just changing the colors. And that way, because we also work with one of the largest telecommunication operators in India called Geo, which is like the biggest network of 5G, 4G network in the world. And they had this Geo coverage platform once upon a time. They still have, but I was part of the team where we initiated the entire design and development part of it. So the bigger challenge was making sure that the geographic locations of the towers and the network and the heat map and which direction the antennas are pointed at. And it was one of the most frustrating things because what you are designing, you have no idea about the technical side of it or the engineering possibilities. But we had to sit down and learn all those scripts first, that it is going to be massive, it is going to be used in the context that nobody actually is going to create on the everyday basis. It is one of those once a lifetime solutions that you come up with. And same thing happened with Netgear. They wanted to have a topographical network map where you are keep adding devices and it identifies and tells you that how the entire network is actually functioning. So I think on those side of interactions, I think that is where a designer must, if they don't want to code, that's all right, but at least be aware about that. What are the things which are possible with these libraries?
I think what you say is really important, and it's one of, I think, the challenges young designers are facing when they get into the field. Is, I think, something I learned, these frustrations I had that I mentioned earlier with like the early web and designing print design, it taught me a lot about the things I had to learn technically. Like I needed to learn some CSS. I needed to learn about iOS frameworks, so that I could talk with a common language with my developers and say, hey, actually, I've seen this table row being used over here in this way on this other app. Here, let's do it. And the more designers can build that technical knowledge, that technical language, the more likely they are to get these really creative ideas out to the world and out to users.
So on the same page, then there is one more question that actually pops in, which is, as UX person, we are responsible to gather and collect and synthesize the requirements. And the developers, they have to see it on a different manner, that whether the functional application is working or not, whether the right data is being shown. But that's again, there is a matter of whose ownership the entire product goes to. So either you include the developer or some business analyst from the beginning, that what we are being fed by the client and what we are proposing in return, because that interaction basically makes or breaks the entire deal. So do you think that the ownership wise, there is a larger stake when we are actually talking about a new product as we begin to the end of it, where you get it to the developer? So what sort of engagement or cross-functional teams communication do you think as a take here?
That's a fantastic question. So I think as a designer, you need access to the client as soon as possible, but you also need a developer in as soon as possible. You need to be running, as you're talking holistically about this new project from, like, say, from a 30,000-foot view, you need to be constantly peppering a developer with, is this possible? Can I do this? What do you think about this? Because it's going to save you time, and it's going to make, you're going to deliver faster, but it's also just going to make collaboration better. Because I think that's the one thing I've learned in almost 20 years in this industry, is that software is a massive collaboration. It is not one or two people. It is a team of people coming together to build a product. And the more you collaborate, the more you have open conversations, the more you are vulnerable with people on your team, the better the product is going to be.
So this one interesting factor or the point that you just spoke in your last position as Omni Group, and that was about that, suddenly there is a new platform and the company wants to go all native. And that is like, you must have been on board with the Apple products before even the first update of iOS app that has come out. So what was your experience like? I mean, as a designer, everything was in-house. They were using a language where everything was related to natural objects. And, you had those leather notepads and numeric keypads. Everything that they designed was related to some physical objects as it was transformed. I'm forgetting the name of the term that was skeuomorphism was used every single time when they were going about it. So what was your experience like translating any application that was native to either a Mac OS or a Windows based system to completely different universe? Because before that, app market wasn't as thriving as it became afterwards.
So So the iPhone came out and there was no app store. So we had the device. And so what we did is we took measurements of the device and we went really old school. We made cardboard mock-ups of the device that you could slide paper into with drawings, and we would move around pieces of paper on there on this mock-up, and we would be like just figuring out touch interaction, which was this new thing that had never really existed. And the whiteboards were just filled with drawings, and there was paper drawings all over the place. And we had more than one of these cardboard mock-ups, and everyone's in the room trying different things out and suggesting we could do this or we could do this. And we had developers in there going, like looking at the frameworks and at this new thing going, well, that's not possible, but this might be possible. It was awesome. It was so cool. That the energy in the building was amazing. I've never experienced it since.
It must have been quite something. I mean, I had the same experience with when I worked on a Google Glasses project with Santander, because they just wanted to create an application that was about finding the nearest cash machine, and the interactions where you swipe and you tap and you swipe and you tap. At the same time, I wanted to see what others were doing, and it turned out there was no actual documentation or design available. So we had to go to real Google Glass official developers page, read the guidelines, and then see that how that actually works. And that was one of the lengthiest exercises to actually understand that what sort of UI or the capabilities there are. And even before that, I think back in 2004 was my first experience working with a handheld device. So there were Microsoft PDAs used to be very common in those days, and they used a stylus to, tap and work. And that was the day when mobile internet was not something that people would use. Even Wi-Fi was rare. Even in the offices, you had those plugged-in computers, in India at least. And we were working for a Scottish government's education department. And they were saying that people will mark absence or presence of their children, whether they will be attending today or not, or if they're approving a holiday or leave. And when you hear about it, sounds very alien for that time, that somebody's just using PDA and marking. And I was given one, and it was ridiculously different from anything that we were doing at that time. And I think that I understand the energy that you must have felt, because when I was doing it and I was trying it out, people were all over me and saying that, what are you trying to do? Said, I have no idea. I just need to use this device at least for 15 days to understand what it does. And then I'm going to tell you that what's going on, because it was the first time that I held a stylus or a touch device anywhere in my life. So, that is something that is relatable and I can understand. So if you have to give young designers coming into the industry any advice, what would that be?
I think it's two things. Get up to speed with technical documentation around iOS and Android. Be familiar with the human interface guidelines for Apple. Be familiar with the material guidelines for Android. Expose yourself to some of the more popular web frameworks that are out there. The second piece is, don't forget that this is still there's a visual aspect to our job. There are design principles we need to follow and consider, and software should look beautiful and be fun to be nice to use. And I think that's something that in some places is being forgotten. It's just like it's becoming very rote. Oh, here's a mobile application and it looks ugly. And I think people want to use beautiful things. They want to use things that are pleasant to use. And I think that's one reason I keep using things. It's pleasant to use, even though it's just a to-do application. So I think those are the two pieces of advice for me.
I think that has been the gist of the conversation, isn't it? That reading the frameworks about anything that you're developing or building, be it JavaScript libraries or design systems or maybe design guidelines coming in from the manufacturer. I mean, right now, everybody must be going crazy about what they can do with the Vision Pro designs, and everybody has just the ideas about what they have seen in those keynotes. I was quite mighty impressed by the Disney applications where they were talking about how the sports is going to be transformed. You can see the recap on the table, the game is live, and then you have stats on the left and the right side of the screen. And we just started playing around with it, and we created a couple of prototypes. One was a virtual classroom where you have the timetable here, students here at the bottom,
Oh,
then there is a
cool.
teacher, and then you have some sort of book which is open on the right, so you can read the text as well, which is there. And I thought that people who will be using it must be, coming in from very rich backgrounds, because everybody in the class has a
Yeah.
a Vision Pro. But then another idea which came to us that we also created a prototype of is about auctions. So there are rare jewelry which is just coming in, and you can see the diamonds rotating, and then people can just bid right there and then. And you can see the object up close rather than sitting at the back and reading in a brochure. So that sort of application was quite got our fancy. So we have uploaded it on Dribble, and really am thinking that the effort that you have to put it into research, the better, the earlier you do it, you are upfront of the game. You can actually quickly just jump into the career that you have ahead of you, and it is easier to get the clients. Because if somebody says, do you have any experience of working with Vision Pro, and you say, yeah, I've seen it, I've never done anything, and then that is where you are held back, because industry is ever going to evolve, it will change, and it is up to you that how you keep yourself updated and with the edge.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So with all that, I think it was a real in-depth conversation with somebody who comes from a creative background, and now with the tech advancing at the pace, we have got really good insights about how the frustration of mid to senior level people must be facing. And when you go into the leadership position, how you have to transform to learn to talk to developers in the language that they understand, and how cross-functional team conversations become the crux of a successful design leader. So with that, I thank you very much for joining us today, Grayson. And I wish that we get to talk once again sometime soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome to talk to you.
So that's it for the today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope that you keep liking, subscribing, and commenting on our videos, and follow this channel. And I hope that this conversations of this sort bring you closer to the reality of how the industry actually functions, and what steps you should take at these times to make sure that you are updated, relevant, and get progress in your careers. So thank you once again, and have a good evening.